Hello, good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you are. Nice to see you. To see you, nice. I can do this now. Yeah, so welcome to live stream. So today's title is called Is Free Will an Illusion? You can ask questions through Skype, which is Lisa Cairns 12, or you can do it through Zoom, and you find the Zoom link in the chat message, the YouTube chat message. It's pinned at the top. And I have some advertisements. Next Sunday, I have a private talk, Zoom talk. You're welcome to join that. You can find that on my website. And then I also have a retreat in April next year for Easter, and that's for 6 nights, 7 days, so you're welcome to join that. I think that's all my advertisements. Okay, so let's begin with the talk. Is free will an illusion? I think I must have done talks on this many times in the past. Is free will an illusion? Yeah. I don't think that's a new title. So Ramesh Balsekar used to say something that I really liked. He would say, in every given moment, do exactly what you feel like doing, knowing that there's nobody doing anything. And he used to make a very big point of saying that it feels like you have free will. Otherwise, you'd feel like you were caged. So you feel like you've got free will, that I can move my hands, I can speak, but there is no free will. When you really understand how this is all working, there isn't somebody that exists separately from everything else with something named free will. And that's a fascinating notion, because our society is built on the premise of you have free will. You are a separate entity and you have free will. So it's really fascinating to explore. But before we explore the title, I'm going to do what I always do, which is do an introduction to what non-duality is to me. So there are so many teachers on the internet now teaching non-duality, and everybody has a different description, a different idea of what it is. So I'm just going to talk about my interpretation of it and what it's like here. But we can also break that down and see that there isn't a Lisa here with an idea of non-duality. So it's also quite contradictory, but I try to bring it down on the human level to make it more clear. Because you might go to all these different teachers and be like, they all speak differently. But there's also some form of sameness as well, but there is a lot of difference. So to me, non-duality isn't a state of being. It's not a way that you behave, and it's not for the person. It goes beyond the person. So there is many recognitions that happen along the way, and for sure the person is going to claim that, like they're going to be like, yeah, this is mine, I own this. This is, I've awakened. But in reality, there is nobody that awakens. So I'm going to predominantly stick to the consciousness teachings or ways of expressing things, while slipping into kind of non-self teaching as well. But this is where I feel comfortable sharing this. But please note that I don't believe in what I say or what other people teach, because non-duality is beyond words, and I can see the issues in words, that the positivity in them and the negativity in them. It's like everything, it always cuts, it's like scales, comes with scales. So, and this is what's so great about so many teachers talking about non-duality now, because there is this wide range in teaching so the mind doesn't get stuck in places. So non-duality, the typical teachings of it would be that there is a consciousness prior to being born, and there is consciousness that goes on after death. And it's prior to the person, it exists independent of the person. And we can't ever really do a scientific experiment to work this out, because we only know our own perspectives, so that could always be dubious to rely on. We can't really step out of consciousness to look at it, because consciousness is what's experiencing everything. In our own experience, we can discover that consciousness is the main source of everything. So when all things change, when everything ages, every experience you go into, there's always consciousness, and there's never anything outside of consciousness. Even the idea of Timbuktu or the moon or an undersea world, that is always an idea appearing in this one consciousness. And so this consciousness is always here, it never leaves. So it was there when you were born, it was even there prior to birth, and it's been there in every instant of life. And the most amazing thing, when you look from the absolute perspective, is it's not been every moment in life, there has just been one moment, which is this never-changing, ever-present consciousness. Such a different way of thinking to the majority's way of thinking. Like, it could be seen as a bit of an insanity, but it's actually the most beautiful teaching there is. And I'm not claiming it as mine, saying I have the most beautiful teaching. I mean non-duality, like this message, which many people share. So this one consciousness is always here and always present. And what comes and goes in it is the world, other people, all of the objects, time, the appearance of time, space, and yourself. Who you think yourself to be comes and goes in this one space of consciousness. And this one space of consciousness also has a girlfriend or a wife called the I am. And the I am, to me, is prior to you as a person. It's like the sense of being. So consciousness by itself is like nothing. It's totally empty. It's nothing, not a thing. But the I am is like the love, like the heart of the consciousness. And actually they're together, they're not separate. You could say like the consciousness is like the portal to the emptiness, and the I am is like the portal to love, but this is only poetic ways of speaking. It's not really that. So the I am is the love side of consciousness. And what I mean by love is I don't mean the excited love that you get when you're falling in love, although there can be mini awakenings when you fall in love. And so there's like moments of that because there's a falling away of seeking in yourself. I'm talking about this love where you're totally content as you are. It's like no desire to go out and do anything. It's just completion. Total completion. And it goes with this emptiness, this empty looking. So there is this completion and this empty looking, and they belong together. So you could say it's like no thing and everything. If you want to match it up with the like more Neo-Advaita, it's no thing and everything. And they come together. And this is here in every experience, it never leaves. Never. It's here right now. There is this empty looking and this I am. And they're here. They don't need any effort to be here. They are here. So there's no effort needed to be here. They are here. Right here, right now. And everything's coming and going in that. These are the basis of experience. And the person has forgotten this. You could say, if you're really extreme about it, in a way the person could never know about this, but it's like too far down the line. If we keep it simple, it's like the person has forgotten that who we truly are is the beingness and the I am. So you could say it's forgotten its nature, who it truly is. And instead, the person believes that it is a form, that it is a character that is running inside the head with all these energetic expressions. So all these emotions, feelings, ideas. So the character is the name, the roles it plays in society, the job, the father, the sister, daughter, its suffering, difficulties, emotions, past grievances, experiences. All of it makes up this seeming person that lives inside the head and is narrating a story of you, including the narration like I am choosing. And you feel like this is who you are, and that consciousness and the I am belong to this story of you. So it's not just this empty looking and the I am, it is I am conscious as somebody. I am conscious as somebody who is good or who is bad or who is right or who's wrong. And to me, this inevitably leads to suffering, because there is an identification with a false self and with a mind that is meant to fix problems. And in that identification, it gets into trouble because it really believes in itself, and the person takes on this identity that my job in this life is to make myself happy as a person by purchasing objects and becoming something. So the goal of the person is to become something in time. And through that, you will achieve your happiness. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with becoming something in time, like doing things, but it's just that it's a misunderstanding that that's what's happening. Total misunderstanding. Your happiness, or your freedom, is always the I am and the empty looking. This is the contentment, this is the home. It's not excitement, it's not a behavior, it's not being angry. It's this underlying contentment. And you could say this energetic expansion. There is this element of emptiness and expandedness to it. It doesn't belong to anyone, like the experiencer doesn't belong to anyone or anything. Like there's nobody that's experiencing this. Is simply what is, and consciousness is all things and no things. So it's like this element of not being anything. And so if we now go to free will, the person believes it has free will. And that's the person that lives in the head that's narrating and telling the story of who you are. I have free will. But who is this I that has free will? Who is that? Who's sitting there now watching Lisa with free will? There is a narration happening of free will. So it's like, well, I'm sitting here. I chose to sit here. I have free will. Free will. And this becomes like an obsession, because the mind obsesses about what people have done to me or what I've done. So guilt and shame and judgment, it obsesses with this idea, and lots of suffering arises from the idea that you have free will. Predominantly because we're sold these magical lives that we're meant to have through storytelling, through films. And so most people feel like a failure because it's such a small percentage that have these like magical lives. What they don't know is most people with these supposed magical lives really suffer with it. They're not actually happy, but from the outside, looking like being a princess, like that's success, or being like a multi-millionaire, that's success. But there's all types of problems that come with everything in life. Like being rich, I speak with a lot of very rich people in one-to-one sessions, and it's really can be a lot of struggle having a lot of money. That's like the main idea, and then I don't have to work, and I'll be free of work. And there's always in the world of things, if you don't enjoy your work, then and you're really unhappy in your work, then that is an idea. If I get lots of money, then I don't have to work anymore. But a lot of people then that don't work then go into depression because they feel isolated and they don't know what to do with themselves. And so sometimes, I see people take off time from work and they go into a deep depression. So it's just not found in that way, where in that place, your freedom. But the mind, the ego, whatever you want to call it, the separate entity, is always telling you that your freedom is in life looking differently, being differently. And it's always avoiding the obviousness of what is. That right now, there is an empty looking and this sense of I am, and that is free. That is free. And this is so simple. If you want to put it in like really simple terms, it's like what this is about is becoming present. But to become present, you have to really see that it's not somebody that becomes present. Your true nature is present. It's just been veiled by that illusory somebody. And it's this unwinding and energetic movement back to intimacy with what is, with what's happening. Like really being here, to be put in really crass words, like being here right now. Be here right now. I'm not sure who says that. Is it Ram Dass that says that? But that's put really crassly because it's actually a lot more complicated than that. It's not like you become present, because who is this illusory you that becomes present? It's like the moving out of the way of you, and then there is presence. And it's like vibrating in everything, and it's totally free. It's like waking back up to what's actually happening rather than dreaming your way through life. narrating your way through life, like living in stories. Like when you're walking along, it's like feeling your steps along the floor and the air against your face and the breeze and the sounds of other people. So I'm not against practicing and doing practices for the person, but I don't see it as this person is going to practice and arrive at something. Because who are you? So I see it as these practices are done to settle down the person. Like a settling down of who you believe yourself to be and what you believe yourself to be. And I don't see it as somebody's free will to do the practices. It's something that happens or it doesn't. Like, so I might say a practice and it's even taken up by the other person or not. And that's life. So in this moment, who is it that practices? So there might be a thought that comes up and says, oh, I'm going to put my attention in the I am. But is that thought really you? Or is it another appearance appearing in this? So we could call it the character. So everything that's appearing in the character is the character. But is that character really you? It's you in the sense that that's what's being looked through, but that's not the actual experiencer. It's like a character in the dream. It's not actually experiencing. We think the character is experiencing, the character is understanding, but it's not an alive thing. It's like a play happening. There isn't a consistent character that's here continuously. There is the appearance of a character arising in every moment that's always changing. And what happens in society is most of us have continuous characters, so they kind of look the same, but there isn't actually a character that's always there and continuous. Like there'll be different elements of it that come up in different moments, dependent on what's needed. And it's not the disappearing of the character, it's the disappearing of that energy that believes that's you and is kind of like glued to it, like that is me, and it's like here, like you, me, like inside the brain talking about itself and really creating this energy like there is somebody, a person, a character looking out of these eyes, when there is consciousness experiencing. And the consciousness is kind of everywhere. It's seemingly looking from this perspective, but it's also simultaneously everywhere and nowhere. Okay, we can go to questions. If you've got a question, you want to write it on YouTube chat, can you please put question? And if you want to ask a question in Zoom, can you please put your hand up? And if you want to ask a question in Skype. Happy New Year, Thomas. Can you you can write the question in there, or you can put call me and I'll call you when I'm ready. Thank you. And you find the links to these attached to the top of the chat. Yeah, Happy New Year. Greetings from Kenya. Hey, nice. It's as almost like the I am, or the me, or the us, or the them, all suggesting individuality. Awareness leads to the belief of free will, of falsehood. Question, how is Khaleesi? She's doing really well, I think. I ended up putting her on medication, which is kind of against like normally I like to do things naturally, and also medication is tested on animals in a horrific way, and so I always have this issue with it, but it kind of happened, and the no didn't come, so she ended up going on medication. I went to the vet, they told us this, and they were like, here's the medication. So yeah, she's doing quite well, I think. But she is old, so she's not going to like endlessly last, obviously. But she's like all of us. But it's not Khaleesi that's alive. So we all think that Khaleesi is alive, but Khaleesi is a functioning that's happening just like the inanimate objects around us. I know that sounds so cold. What's alive is the consciousness that's looking through Khaleesi, and that's who she truly is. And that's what you look at in your animals. That's what you look at in other humans, is this consciousness and this I am that's always here. Because her behaviors, like what, or who is she? Her behaviors, her way of being, her interaction with me, her relationship with other people and myself, that isn't her. That's appearances happening in this. What is her is what's always present, the consciousness and the I am. So who she truly is can never die, but what will change, so actually something can't really die, it will transform into something else, is her body going from this presentation into something else. But that's not who she is. Who she is the empty looking and the I am. So Dan Murder, I don't know what your name is because I saw a message from you somewhere else and it said that my translate is translating your name. So I just apologize. I always call you Dan Murder because I think your name is something else, like Murder or something. But my Google Safari Translate is translating it to murder. So yeah, you already said that that's what you thought was happening. Question. Who am I that is listening to you? If I'm not the ego, would I be here listening? Well, the ego, so if we call it the ego or the separate self, does seemingly affect behavior. It's like, if you think of an AI, have you ever been interacting with an AI or watched one of these YouTube videos about an AI that is programmed to evolve? So like evolve at painting or doing art or something. So what happens, the way that they evolve is they take information from the outside world and they use it to evolve. And that's exactly what we do. So we program the AIs like ourselves. Our mind has the intelligence to take information from the outside world, from everything else that's around us, and to evolve from that. And is that free will or choice? That's what we name as free will, like you have free will. So you've evolved from all your experiences and your conditions and your genetics. But do you actually have free will in that? So the ego does affect what's happening because the ego is claiming it, and through claiming it, it will affect things, it will color things, so it will change the direction in which the appearances happen. But what's really fascinating about saying that is it could equally never be any other way. So even though I say it's changing directions in another way, it's only going the direction in which it goes. I mean, this is also contradictory, but you can kind of get a sense of it. So just go and look in Zoom, see if there's any hands up. Yeah, there's a hands up from Kate. My microphone though is over there. Excuse me, I have to get the microphone. So Kate, you can put your hand down while I, not put your hand down, you can unmute yourself. Hey, I just have to get the microphone. Hang on, not the microphone, the speaker. I'm sort of tied in here. Put the speaker on. Hello, do you want to just try speaking now?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, hang on, sorry, it's just still going through. Okay, now you can try.
Okay.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, that's good. The speaker on my computer's broken, so I have to do it through an external speaker, if you see what I mean. But anyway, you don't need to know that. Nice.
First of all, Happy New Year, and thank you for these wonderful satsangs.
Oh, pleasure.
I appreciate them a lot. Yeah.
Happy New Year.
I'm not really sure how to formulate my question, but I mean, it seems like, given the subject of this talk, the question seems almost ridiculous, but it's about practice.
Yeah.
And it's about, I get everything you're saying about there's like this narrative about the me who's practicing, and everything, but there's still that obviously, I don't know. It's like there's this desire to see my true nature, and there's all these practices that are possible to do, and that I do, but it seems that I'm kind of going back and forth from one to the other, depending on the day, depending on the moment, depending on, and sometimes I just feel like I don't know what's actually happening, what I'm doing, or what.
Yeah. I know what you mean, because there's so much information out there now. Like there's so much you can, like there's so many things you can possibly do.
It just feels there are moments when it's clear what I have to do.
Yeah.
And there are moments where it's just like a big confusion. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, my advice, and I don't know if it's right, that's just my advice. I mean, in a way, it can't be wrong because that's the advice that's coming out, and so it's perfect. But I'm just saying that so that you, like, I think in the psychology of us, it's better that you make the choices, and there's not this like dictatorial teacher. But in the end, like, you do things exactly the way you do things, and I do things, and you could also not say that, but it's just trying to work with the psychology of the apparent person. And I know that one thing that's important for the psychology of the person is to feel empowered in their choices, which is kind of crazy because they don't have choices. So that's like, it's a very complicated subject. So there's many layers to it. But my advice would be just pick something and go for it. You know, like pick practices and just stick with those and go with it. Because my experience is it's like, you know, the people that teach on the internet and you read books and stuff, and even in work, this is the same. It's the ones that have stuck to something that have succeeded. And I don't think there's like practices that are better than other practices. There's so many out there that are really beneficial. But I mean, I've got my favorites, but I know that people that have had this realization from completely different practices.
Well, my experience is just that, you know, sometimes a practice will come easily, and I can, like, for example, like for a certain period of time, I'll be able to really focus on inquiry, for example. And then there'll be a period where all of a sudden there's tons of emotions coming up, and inquiry is just it's just impossible to do. It just doesn't happen at all. So then it's like, okay, that kind of thing.
I wasn't clear. Like, so with I just said one practice, but like, if I were to recommend practices, I would recommend like focusing on the I am or consciousness, which you could say is similar to self-inquiry. So that would be that one. But you're right, there does also need to be a practice which is about emotional release. So then, but I just meant so you're right, like I do think that that's true, but I would just stick to, you know, a comfortable emotional release for yourself, and the I am practice or self-inquiry, and oscillate between the two. So when there's lots of emotions, doing a release. So, and also with the emotional release one, there could be like a couple that you go between, but I would really focus on, you know, not going too far out into lots of different ones. And it can be helpful learning different things, because it can, you know, like bring up different things. But yeah, I would not let the attention go into too many things. I would just do a practice and keep on focusing on that practice. And you can keep doing the I am practice also, or the self-inquiry, you know, when there's lots of suffering coming up. It's also super interesting to do it then as well, and really painful. That for me is something that's been, it's like if I do it while I have a lot of emotions coming up, there's almost this sense that I'm somehow pushing the emotion away, or I'm somehow ignoring it or something. It's like bypassing it. Can be. Yeah, it's difficult. It's difficult to know, and it's okay if you get it wrong and you bypass sometimes. Like that's I'm sure I even still bypass sometimes my feelings, because like feelings are quite an interesting phenomena. And you know, you're out in public, or you're with people, or you're like teaching a retreat, and sometimes you're like, there's this moment in time, this feeling is not appropriate. There's something else that needs to happen. You know, it just happens. Yeah. So it's like, I wouldn't give yourself too much of a hard time. But if you're practicing also simultaneously an emotional release technique, or an embodiment technique, then you know, you can accept that sometimes you're going to bypass.
Mm-hmm.
And with the emotional release, like sometimes it might be appropriate to have a couple of techniques under your belt for when sometimes ones don't work, but I would generally stick in the same area. So like sometimes when I work with people, they what's that word called? Disassociate a lot. And you know, when they're not disassociating, we can work on the emotion, but when they are, I feel then it's important to work with bodily sensations. So you know, there are these little differences. So this is where it all gets very complicated, but in general I would stick to things. But if you're disassociating, then you might need to not work on emotions and work on just feeling the body, you know. And then there's trauma, so it's not so easy as I make it sound, but generally overall, you know, stick to the same forms of practice. You know, don't keep jumping around, and just keep doing it even through the hell of it and the pain of it. Like keep presenting yourself to it.
Yeah, that's more or less. I just I have two. You know, I've got I work on beliefs. I work on emotions and inquiry. But would you mind saying a little more about the I am practice, because that's something that I'm trying to feel into, and I'm not really sure I'm getting it.
Yeah, the I am practice is. I mean, some teachers teach the consciousness practice, but it's just never been a thing for me. The consciousness practice. Like keep questioning who you are, and that will become clear. So some teachers will teach putting the attention back in the attention, but that to me is like putting it back in the personal awareness. Like you can never really look at consciousness. Like consciousness is always looking at you. So listening to these talks and other teachers' talks and self-inquiry, that helps with the consciousness aspect of it. But the I am practice to me is a way of staying present to the bodily sensations and to what's actually happening. So Ramana Maharshi would say that the feeling of I am is in the left side of the heart. And I understand what he means, even though it's not really there, it seems to manifest there. So it's not really in the left side of the heart. That's like when it's beginning to come into form. Like really it's everywhere equally and all things. But I understand that there is a connection to the heart, and then the I am feels like love. And if you go into your heart and you say I am, you might begin to feel this sense of being. I mean, it's a bit of a trick because the sense of being is everywhere, so you can't really feel it, but it's a trick, a bit like the consciousness teachings. But for me, that one worked, whereas the consciousness one, I was always like, okay. So do you know what I mean when I say a sense of being?
I mean, for me, it's that I think that's the it's like part of me thinks yes, but then there's part of me that's like, is that really it?
No, yeah. I would just listen to the part that says, I think I know. And then when you discover that it's deeper than that, then you just discover that it's deeper than that, because you inevitably will. So, because as you have realizations and you go deeper, it becomes like more and more clear and more refined. So I would just listen to the side that feels like, yeah, I know what it is. And then you keep putting your attention in that. And then through doing this practice, it's like becoming really present to the sensations of the body and the sensations of the world, like what's actually happening. Then it will reveal itself to be more clear. Its quality is contentment and love for what is, but it's often covered by lots of emotions and deadness. Like a lot of people feel very numb and very dead and very cut off from the body. But underneath everything, there is this sense of being. And it is connected to the heart. Like Ramana Maharshi, I feel is right, but it's like one of these hacks. It's also not right, but it's. And I find that that's a lot easier to do than the putting it in the empty looking. Although there is beauty in putting it in the empty looking, but it just feels a bit more weird. That one feels a bit more natural or organic.
Okay.
You could also do both simultaneously, like the empty looking and the I am. So it's like, but it's it doesn't really matter.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, pleasure, Kate. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Derek. How can there be free will if the person who is perceiving is working from a program like a conditioned matrix and is unaware that there is something other than a person? Surely these choices are all illusory. Of course, yeah. I'm not saying they're not, they're seemingly illusory. But there is the appearance of choice, so the person feels like it chooses. And from a psychological aspect, it's very important that that happens, which seems like a great contradiction. So the character, so in the world of the character, it's the same as with a dog. Like it's, you know, like it's important that the dog chooses to sit rather than you forcing the dog to sit down. Like, and then it gets a reward and it feels good for it, but there's not actually a dog there, there's not somebody there. And it's the same for us. It's important that we feel like we choose, because what happens in a lot of families and psychology is that a parent doesn't know how to encourage the person to find their own choices. And so the person gets stuck in a lot of insecurity about choices. So you get personality structures that really struggle with this idea of choice, and it brings up a lot of panic and a lot of fear, because basically what's happening in the machine of the person is they fear that if they choose the wrong thing, they are going to really suffer, and that their happiness is based on that choice. And it's just an insecurity. They just haven't been praised enough for their choices, for maybe lots of different reasons. Maybe it's not even to do with their parents, it could be something else, but a lot of the time it is to do with the first 4, 5 or 6 years of being born into this life. Okay. Question. Hi Lisa, during a shroom trip it was seen that the universe is empty and all is happening mechanically in a sense. At first it was quite disturbing, but then who is here to be disturbed? Yeah. And it negates you, that's why it's disturbing. The you is disturbed. It's not the I am and the empty looking. It's not your essence. It's not this moment that's disturbed. It's the person in the dream that's disturbed, because then it's like, what is my point? What is my meaning? Because it's been programmed that its meaning is to control its life and to do things and to achieve things and to become the best person it can be and to be loved and admired by the rest of the universe. So it's quite horrifying that it's like in existential hell. But from the sense of consciousness and the empty looking, it couldn't care less. What about the choices, free will, flowing from the ego? When, for example, someone hurts someone and maybe even kills someone. This is to do with a problem in the character. And the character, it can either be born with, so they can be a psychopath or a sociopath. I always forget the born one. I think it's sociopath is born with it. So there is lack of empathy in the brain, so everything's just about what it can get from the situation, and so killing is nothing for it. It's like us who have empathy, like killing a lettuce or killing a cushion. It doesn't mean anything, and that's the same for the sociopath. But then you get the psychopaths and the narcissists, and people that kill out of rage, and that's a personality issue. So that is, well, they do say with psychopaths that it can be partly genetic, wiring of the brain, and then partly, I think, conditioning. So there is an issue in the conditioning of that person. So that person might be conditioned to think that it is better than other people. Its happiness is, it deserves happiness over other people, that it has a right to do what it wants to other people. Or there might be great trauma and therefore murdering out of rage or anger. There could be murdering out of poverty, like being in extreme poverty and life becoming very cheap in a way, trying to survive for the family. So those are the three big reasons of why it can arise. And it's conditioning. It's simply their conditioning, and it's the thoughts that's coming up in those bodies. We want to say it's their fault, because that does two things. It means that we can punish them for their actions, or we can try and rehabilitate them from their actions. So we can say, you did something wrong, you've got to rehabilitate yourself because you're disturbing everybody else in society. And that's totally appropriate. I'm not against that. And so that's what we like. But also it helps us out on an existential level to be able to blame them, because it just feels too benign that people go around killing each other and it's not their free will. Like, to see everything as mechanisms that are happening is just too existentially incompatible with people's beliefs. Like, that can't happen. It's somebody's fault. They chose to do that separate from everything else, and it's their fault. They are evil and they're going to hell. Whereas to look at that they're a mechanism of their environment and they're not separate from their environment, disturbs the seeker, disturbs the separate person that believes in its own autonomy. And it allows direction of rage and anger and all this energy, rather than like the real acceptance of the nature of this and the uncontrollability of this. That we as people are not in control of our own lives. And that it's a happening. We are an appearance that's happening, that's relied on thousands of things that have come before, billions of things that have come before, and at the same time was spontaneously appearing from nothing. A thing. Just appearing. And it seems like, when the mind started, when thinking started, like Khaleesi has no issue with we're staying at my mum's at the moment, and she's got a new dog. Her dog passed, and they don't get on the best, but she doesn't have revenge thoughts towards this other dog. Like, she's not angry with my mum for getting the dog, or jealous. Oh, she is jealous, but it's a very momentary thing. There's not a holding on to it. It's like it comes up, she's like angry, like this dog is a puppy and it's like all over Khaleesi and she doesn't like it. And it's pain and she's angry in that moment, but then she just forgets about it, then it's the next moment. Whereas us, when we began to be able to narrate things, it became important to associate blame, like they did that and they are wrong. Whereas Khaleesi's just angry in the moment, right? They did that and they're wrong, and they mustn't do it again. And then there's all these like complex socializations around it. So in order to survive, we have to get on and we have to take responsibility and adapt our behavior for other people. It's so complex. But in the end, when it's examined, we are simply machines appearing the character. And it's no control, but we learn from interaction with other instruments. So it's like the interaction with other instruments changes the stories, even though there can only be one story. But if you look at the kaleidoscope, you could see it like that, the way the patterns and the colours all change. But they're all connected to each other, like they change because of the hitting against another colour and the merging with another colour. It's beautiful. I keep looking at the wrong camera, I keep looking at the Zoom camera. So you might think I'm looking down. And this isn't really something that you need to learn. I think it can be relaxing in the psychology and relaxing for you exploring your psychology. But it's not something that you need to learn, because it's the way things are happening. Like, as you become more present, you realize that everything's just appearing out of this, and that there isn't a fixed entity in here that is choosing. There is appearances and responses happening. It's beautiful. Bruce Peter's question. Hi Lisa, read that one. Question. Leviticus. Question. Is there any purpose to attend your satsang face to face? I follow you a long time since I moved to the UK, but just curious, in which district do you live? Blessings. In which district do I live in England? I don't really like to talk about where I live online. And I don't know if I do very many live talks where you can come to. You can come to the Zoom talk online, which is next week, but that's online. Yeah. And you can come to a retreat in Germany next year as well. So is there any point? I think that's something you have to ask. I don't want to sell my retreats to you or like advertise and be like, you'll get this and you'll get that, because in the end I don't know. So you have to find how that feels for you. Make up your own mind. Danielle Mania. Question. I have practiced the inquiry path. There seems to be a lot too much thought, too much emotion. I don't feel in control on anything that happens. How to approach this? I want to stop suffering. Yeah, thanks, Danielle. Yeah, I mean, I remember when I first started meditating at the local Buddhist center, my mind was just like crazy. Like, it was just so chaotic. I don't mean like mentally insane crazy or like having mental health issues. I mean, like, it was just so hyperactive, like the thoughts like boom, 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 boom. And yeah, I was so out of touch with the way I was feeling as well. And that can sometimes take years to begin to come to terms with. And begin to process it and get in contact with your body. So you could pick a therapeutic emotional release practice to do simultaneously. There are so many out there. The ones which I did is connecting your thoughts with your chakras. So what I used to do and what I still do now is if I'm having particular thoughts, I take them down into my body and understand what I'm feeling in my body and what's deeper than that thought. So say if you're thinking about your neighbor and how much you dislike your neighbor and it's obsessively repeating, you'll look at that thought and you can ask who is thinking these thoughts, and that's great. But the emotional technique that I did was I would link that thought to a feeling. So what am I feeling when I'm thinking that? And it might be anger or annoyance. And I know that anger tends to be in the heart. Sometimes you can just feel it, you can think it and then you can feel it in your body, but anger tends to be in the heart or in the solar plexus. So then I would go and I'd feel in that area and be like, okay, so what am I feeling here? Like, what is deeper than they shouldn't have done this or they're bad people for doing this? So I'd go, what's deeper than that? And then I get in contact with the deeper feelings. I feel insecure, I feel vulnerable, I feel afraid, I feel helpless, like the deeper feelings than the story. And then I would stay in that feeling, or like try and do some sort of exercise to release it. And there's lots of different exercises like massage, or like a breathing exercise to try to release it. And at the same time, or afterwards, you can also begin to see like who has those feelings and who has those thoughts. And you'll see that there is a consciousness, an empty looking, and an I am, and these thoughts and these feelings are arising in that, and that's not who you are. But because they're intense, there's lots of focus on that person. What happens, Danielle, often is that, Daniel, sorry, it might be Daniel Mania. Daniel, sorry about my reading. What you find might also happen is you might have feelings of feeling disempowered or chaotic or overwhelming or overwhelmed. But notice that this is in your personality structure. You're feeling these feelings because that is a habit. That is a habitual way of feeling. We don't often find feelings outside our habitual ways of feeling. So often we'll be like, this is too chaotic or this is too much. And so then there is a giving up and moving on to something else. So it's also looking at those thoughts, I want to stop suffering. Where does that thought come? Like, just keep going to extremes of it. Like, keep doing it. Why is someone a Van Gogh and someone else a Monet? What determines the difference if there's no free will? If it isn't DNA programming and social... Is it DNA programming? I would say it's DNA programming and social conditioning, and you could also call that karma. Like karma. It's because of everything that's happened before, that person is destined to be that. But I don't see somebody that does Van Gogh as better than somebody that sits begging on the streets. Like, I don't see any better. It's like beautiful that they can do that, and that's like really amazing that they can do that. But it's all just form. It's like Khaleesi wouldn't be impressed by a greyhound like being better at running than her. She wouldn't even perceive it. She would just try to run and catch up with it. It's just the way it is. It doesn't really matter. But what we do is we hold these people on pedestals and we're like, that is what I've got to be. That is the best. Do you ever use the letting go technique devised, I believe, by Dr. David Hawkins? Mike, you'd have to tell me what the letting go technique is to know that as well. Dan Murder question. Do you suffer the I am in order to replay to these questions? Is there a psychologist, Lisa, a kind of diminished I am? As you can see, I seem to have many questions, but I am still. That's interesting, Dan, to have the questions and then say at the end of it, but I am still. That's yeah, why did you say that? I work with so many people and just perceive so many games that people are playing. Have done, for 12 years now. I'm always looking for it. It could be just like matter of fact information and it means nothing. But it could also be a way of pushing me away and a way of like you trying to keep safe. Like I am still, like I am free, but I'm asking you these questions. And there could also be like a vulnerability in there. Like I ask these questions and I feel vulnerable that I'm asking. another person these questions. I should know them for myself. It's all characteristic stuff that happens. Because from the I am still perspective, it doesn't care either way if you're still or not still. It doesn't want to tell someone or not tell someone. It's just experiencing. Do you suffer, and I don't know what you mean by do you suffer the I am in order to reply to these questions. Is there a psychologist, Lisa? Is the psychologist, Lisa, a kind of diminished I am? I don't really know what you mean by that. I think I see things differently from you. Yes, it's too hard for me to try to merge my way of seeing and speaking about things to your way, like I'm not really sure. So maybe you could elaborate on that question. I don't know how you surrender the I am in order to reply to these questions. That doesn't make any sense to me. It doesn't mean that you're wrong. It's just that I don't know. I don't find meaning in that. It doesn't relate to my experience. Is the psychologist, Lisa, a kind of diminished I am? I don't know what that means. Yeah, so maybe you could elaborate or put it in a slightly different way. Lisa, do you choose your stones consciously? I do choose my stones consciously, but I also am not choosing the stones consciously, because who would? So there is a Lisa character here that looks at stones and is conscientious about the jewels that she's putting on her body. But that's not who I truly am. That is something that's happening. So the Lisa character is not consciously as in the big consciousness. It's like she is comparing them and contrasting them to other stones, just like she does maybe with food. And says these stones are better for today or yesterday, or this helps with this. This matches my outfit. But that isn't who I am, and that isn't a separate entity that actually has free will or choice. It's a character which is arising. Who I am, who you are, is this empty looking and this I am. This consciousness and this I am, which is absolutely still and free and expanded. Lisa, do you choose your stones next year in 2024? Yes, that is correct. Next year is 2024. Hi Lisa, can I talk to you, Joss? Yes, you can ask a question. Remember everybody to put question on the YouTube chat and then ask. Do you or can you recognize the divine in you by efforts of practicing meditation, or is it only by grace? Hey Rob. Everything is grace in the end. So everything I say contradicts itself and is kind of like just trying its best to point to something. But it's grace. That dropping away is grace. But the practicing seems to settle the illusory person. So it's like thinning out the clouds in the sky. Lana. Hi Lisa. How is it seen that there is nothing appears as everything? How can nothing be seen? What is being seen then? It cannot be seen. But your mind might believe that nothing is a thing, so you're looking for a thing. So you're looking for a thing which is nothing that can be seen, but nothing cannot be seen. It's what is. Did you want awakening more than life? Yes. Christ said, to follow me, you must hate your family. Really? I would like to talk to you. Can you call me? Thanks. How would I meant to be call you on YouTube? Send me a message saying call me on Skype, or put your hand up in the Zoom. Jose. Hi Lisa. Could you put question people when you write a question on YouTube chat, and then put the question? What are your thoughts on these cultural rituals we call holidays? Do you still celebrate them? Yes. Because that's what family does. I think left to my own devices, I don't care at all. I like the presents, I have to say. I do enjoy the swapping of presents. That feels fantastic. And I do enjoy the positivity and the appreciation that can come through the holidays. But I just have no feeling towards them at all. Any holidays like that, or birthdays, it just means nothing to me. That doesn't mean that everyone else has to feel like that, even if they're totally free. It's just the way it appears here. Is your fear of death gone? From the absolute perspective, yes. From the human perspective, no. So if I was being attacked by a pack of feral dogs or something, or sometimes when me and Khaleesi are out, if a dog runs at us, there's fear that arises in the body. But there's not somebody you could say here with fear. There is fear happening. But from the absolute perspective, there's absolutely no fear, because death is just going home even more. I know, like in Buddhism, they say, that death is absolute nirvana, and it really is, because it's the end of any separation at all. Because in this world of appearances, there has to be seemingly identification with one object in order for it to happen. Otherwise, it would be absolute chaos. Paradise. Rana, question. With living with this awareness, do you find it difficult to have any interest in the news or anything going on in the world? No, there's still interest, but maybe different from what it was. But yeah, thankfully there is still interest in some things. So in situations with socialization, I can be interested in talking about politics or how societies work. That can still interest me. How we live peacefully together, that interests me. Question. Surrendering the I am was in reference to replying on the mind in order to reply to these questions. I understand from what you say now. So by going into the mind, do I lose connection with what is? It doesn't feel like it, but it feels more expansive to speak about non-duality than it does to speak about psychology. But it doesn't feel like I lose connection with what is. But I think it's super important to speak about psychology as well. When you've been a teacher for a period of time and you realize the mental states that people come to non-duality in, there needs to be a certain amount of speaking about psychology from my perspective. Because, it doesn't seem that the expression of non-duality doesn't seem to work when people are in a really bad mental state, and so there needs to be a pointing to more calmness in the flow of things and in the character. Otherwise, what can often happen, especially with the young men that come to the talks, is they begin to go even more into their already suicidal thoughts. It can happen in women, but I've seen it in lots of young men. They come to this and they're bypassing doing the psychology because they're too ashamed to do the psychology. So they come to this because it's the promise of enlightenment and then becoming like Jesus Christ. And they're like, okay, I can cope with that. But they really need to deal with the psychology as well. Otherwise, it's not good. And also just for general people as well, I try to point the psychology, so in a way their mind can give up on that route. So when they feel like no, so the thought comes up like no practice is working for me. I know that's not true when people say that to me. Like practices don't work for me. It's just that they've got a disbalance in the solar plexus, and there is a fear of choices and there is a fear of action, and the idea of practice triggers all their past experiences, and so therefore they don't practice or they move away from this subject because it involves practice. And so just pointing that thought out means that people can go beyond those thoughts and see that who they are is beyond that these thoughts aren't truth, these thoughts are illusions that are arising. Just saying to them, when somebody says that practices don't work for me, just saying that that's an illusion is true, but it's most probably not deep enough. They most probably have to see the source of that thought, that when they were younger, they got conditioned into believing they weren't capable of doing things, or that they couldn't do things, or that things didn't work out of them, and that they have an injury there. And when they can stay with that feeling, then it will reduce all this illusory surface thoughts of sitting there trying to practice and being like, I can't do this, it's not working. And you get to a deeper perspective of the illusion and that it's not true. And what is true is this. This is it, baby. This is home. This is freedom. What is? Question: do you graduate the depth of realization, i.e. Buddha versus yourself, or is it a cash always to the 0 point equally? I don't understand that question, Film Mafly. Kate Alvo, question: hi Lisa, would you ever do retreats in North America? I'd love to come to your retreat, but it's very expensive to fly to Germany from Canada. Hey Kate, I doubt it. It's a lot to, organize, do visas, and then go over. Teaching non-duality isn't my main job. It's not like it's part-time. and to, travel around the world doing retreats in different countries. It has to really be your main focus because it's a lot to do and a lot to organize. And even if you have organizers, you still have to organize, not because they're deficient anyway, just because it's the nature of things. There's lots of things to decide, and you're in the end responsible. So yeah, I really doubt it. It's so easy and simple and quicker for me to keep it in the countries which I move around. I'm not telling you where I live, but I don't like to speak about where I live on the internet, but I think it's quite obvious that I live in Europe. Yeah, thanks for your question, Kate. But I would love to do it and meet my American friends, North American friends. There's so many beautiful people that I've met over the internet and spoken with and shared with, and it would be lovely to one day meet you in person. But it's just too much work currently. Do you have any experience with EMDR in psychology? Yeah, I love it. Great way to work with trauma. It's a great tool. So earlier when I was saying about practices, like picking one and sticking to it, I like sometimes with the psychology element of things, you do need to have a couple of techniques, because if you go into trauma, then EMDR is fantastic. And staying with your feelings and questioning it might not be the best technique in that moment. So just having these few psychological techniques is good, but maybe more with the non-duality, just picking one practice and sticking with it. I am. That's my preference. What is your main job? To do nothing. Partly, actually. But I'm a writer. I write creatively. Which says on my website, if you go to my website. You can find out more about that on my website if you want to. My experience is that when I hold an intention, thoughts and actions appear to arise to fulfill the intention. From an absolute perspective, this isn't so, yet I seem to create. Please comment. Yeah, you seem to create. And that's how a healthy human should feel. So the healthy human psychologically should feel like it's creating. An unhappy person tends to feel like they're out of control, and that's to do with the solar plexus. Imagine your dog, if it didn't feel like it was walking or it didn't feel like it was eating its food, it would be a sort of disassociated bad situation. So, you feel like you are the creator and you take responsibility for your actions, and that's a healthy character. But that character isn't who you are, and there isn't actually somebody there choosing. There's an appearance of somebody there choosing. Thanks, Jack, for pointing that out. Yeah, an intention and like putting your attention on achieving something or doing a practice is all really great, healthy stuff on the human level. But who you are is that empty looking, ultimately. And this character is an appearance that's happening. And seemingly through these different ideas coming in and interacting with different people, it gets conditioned in different ways. And a great conditioning is to feel in control of your life. But on a deep level, that's not your happiness, that's not who you are, and there's not actually free will that's happening there. There's an appearance of free will. So I love the law of attraction. So it sounds really contradictory. A non-duality teacher that teaches there's no free will loves the law of attraction and the idea and the teachings of karma. Because it just seems all perfect for me. I have no issue with that. So thanks, Jack, for that comment. Daniel, question. Yeah, thanks. If you could say question, because, if it's a comment, I lose time going through the comments, so it's better if you put question. Question. Daniel, since I started this, I have had a weird stance on death. I almost always think, I don't think I'm scared of death. I'm actually be thrilled to know what it feels like. Should I be concerned? I think that that's too precise for me to comment on. I don't know your psychology, I don't know your background, I don't know what's happening there. That's too precise, you know. We'd have to have a really good few sessions to unpack that. Question. Can you speak a bit about how the human conditioning is part of oneness? Yeah, sure, Petra. So if we go back to the Big Bang, which has never happened because all we ever have is now, but if we go back to the supposed Big Bang, everything is a succession of what's come before. So you are here because your grandparents mated, your great-grandparents mated, your great-great-grandparents mated, your great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-grandparents killed off all the Nathaniels. Did I say that word right? Nathaniels. You know, like spreaded to Europe, or Petra, I presume you're European with that name. Or American, or Australia, you know, like, or you're descended from Europe. So spread to Europe. I got confused by trying to be PC about talking about race then. Anyway, so all these things that came before is contributing to every decision and everything that you do now. Even language, the fact that our ancestors created language and the ability to communicate like this, that there was a mix of all these different races, so the language kept evolving and changing. So everything comes from the past. So every choice, every decision that you make now is dependent on everything that came before, the way your parents brought you up, your teachers, what you were exposed to. There isn't somebody that's acting freely now, or speaking freely now, or thinking freely. You've taken ideas from the past. Simultaneously, there is no past, and it's simply arising from now, from what is, from this moment. This. Which is really miraculous. So the way that you see it all as oneness is that there is nothing which is independent from anything else. We're like a kaleidoscope. We're all dependent on the other colours. We're all dependent on everything else. Then you can go from the other angle and break it down, as in like looking at the details of everything. That if you keep breaking us down and zooming in, like there's smaller and smaller particles until eventually you come to nothing. So, you know, you could say that we're made up of atoms, and so the way we move is dependent on the way the atoms are lined up. I mean, that's just mind-blowing. That gives me shivers even thinking about it. Like, how is this working? So we're standing here as apparent humans with apparent free will, but then if you zoom in on us, we're like all these atoms lined up in different ways, giving the appearance of something. And then if you go even more into science, you could look at something like quantum entanglement, which means that two atoms that interact, then no matter how far away they are from themselves in the universe, are affecting the actions of the atoms. So then it's like all of us, because our atoms are always continuously interacting, we're like having all this effect on everything else. It's like mind-blowing when you go into science. Like, how could we ever get stuck in the notion that we are separate entities living in a separate world, interacting with all these separate objects? It's such a simplistic idea. It's so mind-blowing and profound and beautiful when we begin to step out of these boxes of what we've been taught and ask questions. It's beautiful. Yeah, thanks Petra for your question. Shlomu. Do spiritual persons have similar characteristics in your opinion? I don't know about that. I know that people that follow different spiritual teachings tend to have similarities. So you go to different teachers or different teachings and you tend to find similar personality types, like different, but there's a similarity. So that, but I don't know, spirituality is so big, eh? Daniel, question. What do you mean by would need to have more sessions to unpack that? What would be the best way to arrange this from my end? Thanks. Oh yeah, sorry, Daniel. I didn't mean that I would give you sessions. I meant that I can't answer it because we'd have to do sessions to unpack that, and I'm not going to offer sessions to you. Not that it's anything personal, just I can't take on any more people at the moment. I am going to take on more people in the coming future. I'm trying to organize a way to take on new people. But I got such a long waiting list that by the time it came to you, Daniel, that possibly be years. So, but you could unpack it with someone else. If you go to my website and look at the reference section, you'll find lots of like non-duality teachers, lots of non-duality therapists. So you can go and check that out and unpack it with someone else. Question, how does one feel their chakras? Great question. Through practice. A really nice technique that I like is Osho chakra sound meditation. And you can find that on my website. So if you go to my website and my reference page, you can find that in there. Osho chakra sound meditation. Yeah, and practice it every day. And trust me, you'll begin to feel the chakras. This is what I mean by like, just go for it. Practice it. Just pick one and go for it. Any advice on unlocking a particular lost memory? Mystery suddenly lost years ago, like a thick membrane veiled it from accessible despite any conscious efforts. No, sorry. I don't know about how to unlock a memory. I do know about like you can feel feelings in your body, but you don't necessarily remember it. But I don't know how you find the actual memory of those feelings. Question. Hi Lisa, can you say time is real for the person but not existing for the absolute? Yeah, the person exists in time, so the time is real for the person. Like, you would not exist as a person without the idea of time. And we as humans made up the idea of time. It's not a fact. And we've imposed that onto our experience. But we know that time isn't real also from scientific experimentation. Like, so if you go up in an airplane, go around the world, I can't remember if you gain time or lose time. I think you gain time. Somebody can tell me in the chats. Do you gain time or lose time in the airplane? I know it's minute, but the faster you go, you gain time, I think. Question. Hi. Is that Hugo? He used to come to my Hugo Baker. He used to come to my talks in Gouda. I just like chanting. Go for it. Yeah, if that works for you, go for it. Beautiful. I have my particular practices that I like. Daniel, I love your honesty. So refreshing. Nice. Larry, the faster to slower time. Okay, so if you go in an aeroplane, you lose minute amount of time. So the faster you go, the slower time becomes. I always forget that. John Taylor question. I'm going to a 10-day Vipassana retreat. Yeah, go for it. I love Vipassana. Are there any suggestions as to what to practice to further dissolve the sense of self? John, I think Vipassana is a great way for getting into your body and just really go for it. I think that the I am practice is good, and to also have emotional release technique that you can use, when the emotions are really strong. But my preference is the I am. So putting in every moment, remembering to put your attention in the I am. And then there are, like if you get more specific, like, so if you're disassociating, then there's a really great book that I could recommend where you do exercises to feel your body more and stuff. Yeah, but just go with it, pick these practices and just really go for it. Commit for the next year to really go for it with these practices. And yeah, there can be adjustments and tweaks and add-ons, but generally keep in the same area, Yes, I was in Gouda. Hey Hugo, so nice to hear from you. It's been a long time. Lower gravity in aeroplanes, less time duration, time minutely passes slower. Yeah, I love Interstellar. Is that what it's called, that film? Interstellar, I think. Pardon me. Question. Is suffering necessary in the story before awakening? I studied a lot of Tolle and Don Miguel and had glimpses for years, but felt a clear shift recently after a huge loss that hurt me deeply. Can be. If life is too good, why would you ask questions? So, when deep suffering happens, it sort of like forces you into some form of presence or looking at it. My experience is that people will self-medicate and stay in their illusions until something comes along that's too strong to push them out of that. So I got into this so early, I think, because I went through a lot of suffering in childhood. There was a lot of really sad things that happened in my family, like really sad things, and trauma. And so I was pushed into asking questions at a very young age. And I'm so grateful for that. I bow to that suffering that happened, even though I'm so sad for my family members that went through it and what happened. But it spurred me to ask questions at a young age. If that hadn't happened, I wouldn't have asked the questions. I would have gone out and get a job and settled down and had kids, most probably. I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with that, but I just wouldn't have asked questions at such a young age. And I really started asking questions young. What's this about? And that often happens, you have immense suffering, you're like, what's the point to this? Why would we suffer? What's the point to being happy? And these questions, they're the beginning of it. They're not the end of it. Like, don't get stuck in that, but they're the beginning of a change happening. Which is really freaking profound that an animal, a mammal, can do that, can ask why it's alive and what's the point of living and what's going to happen when it dies. It's like such a brilliant thing that appears. It doesn't appear in other animals. Like Khaleesi doesn't sit there and have existential angst and be like, I don't know the meaning of my life. But I never like to commit too strongly to things because in the end I don't know. And I think that there's a possibility that some people are born free and then often they're labelled as having mental disability, like a cognitive disability or something, or they're neurologically diverse. No one hits the lottery and goes to an ashram. Well, actually, I do come across a lot of very wealthy people. So in my teaching, I've come across a lot of wealthy people. So that's not actually my experience, Larry, that money comes with difficulty. And I think that people that win the lottery, I think half of them say their life got worse after winning the lottery. I think it's something like that. John, how does one know whether one is being disassociative with their practices? Great question, John. And I don't know, I can answer that as a whole because it's so different from everything. But if you're having really strong emotions coming up and strong thoughts, then maybe not putting the attention into I am, but going in and exploring those feelings. And then when there is not such strong emotions or thoughts, then putting your attention in the I am. But it's a really good question because you've got to work out your barometer of when they're strong or not, because they're also habitual. So, you can just keep moving away from those habitual thoughts and feelings. But when they become stronger, then you want to investigate them and look, so just mix it up. So if you want to ask a question in Zoom, put your hand up. Asking about a teacher's life is self-avoidant on the student part. Can be. Does putting the attention in the I am slow down time? Time is a very funny thing anyway, so I don't know, it could or doesn't. Like, sometimes time seems so slow and sometimes so fast, doesn't it? It's a weird thing. What about the folks that drone on and on about their life? That's a psychological thing. You need to learn how to deal with that. I mean, it's complicated. I still find it sometimes hard with family to deal with that, but there's many psychological things that you can learn and you can understand to stop it and say this is too much for me or I can't handle it, but in a really lovely way so it's not offensive to them. But maybe we're getting to the end now, as we've done an hour and a half. Yum, yum, yum. So maybe we just sit in silence for 10 minutes for the end of the talk. Yeah, please remember to subscribe and like these videos if you want to support my channel. I really appreciate that. Okay. Okay, maybe that's enough now. Yeah, nice. It was so beautiful sharing with you all. I so appreciate sharing. Like it's like love for me. So yeah, I really appreciate it, and I really, really, really wish you everything. Okay. Danke. Tschüss.